Walters is the place to be before and after games at Nationals Park. Be sure to check out their self-poured beer wall that includes options such as the Vienna Lager.
Craftsman Days are here at Lowe's with big savings on the tools you need. Save $100 on the Craftsman V20 6-tool power tool combo kit, now at $199. No matter what the project is, Craftsman's high-quality, high-performance products empower you to build on. Stop by your nearest Lowe's store and check out the full line of Craftsman tools today. Valid through 6/18 while supplies last. Selection varies by location.
Gibson's winding up with a runner at third in the pitch. Swung on line to the right field line. Kjerstad on the run. Won't get there. It's down to the warning track and to the wall. Caroms past Kjerstad off the wall. Young is on his way to third, and he slides in with a triple. As the sixth run of the first inning scores for the Nationals. C.J. Abrams coming up for the second time. It's the Nationals 6 and the Orioles nothing. And here comes Tony Mansolino, the acting manager of the Orioles, who probably can't believe what's happening in his first game as skipper. And the pitch swung on by Ruiz, and a line shot at a left center field, a base hit. Rounding third is Lowe. He's coming in to score with run number 10 in the afternoon for the Nationals. Keibert Ruiz has his second RBI of the day, 16th of the year. It's now Washington 10 and Baltimore 2. Brzykcy ready, comes to a stop, kicks, delivers the pitch. Swing and a foul tip held by Ruiz, and a Curly W's in the books. The Nationals have won the first two games of this Beltway series and have clinched a season series Beltway win over the Orioles as they win this one here in Baltimore.
And welcome to Nats Chat, along with MASNsports.com Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman, who was at Oriole Park at Camden Yards in Baltimore. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. It's funny how things work out. The Nats in October 2017 hired Chicago Cubs bench coach Davey Martinez as Nats manager. The man who succeeded Davey as Cubs bench coach was Brandon Hyde. He had been a coach for the Cubs since November 2013. The Orioles hired Hyde as their manager in December 2018. Davey Martinez and Brandon Hyde, who were friends, had become two of the longest tenured active managers in MLB. But it turns out that Hyde's last game as Orioles manager came against Davey's Nats. We on Friday night had the Nats 4-3 win at the O's in game one of a three-game series, in a game in which the Nats overcame a 3-2 eighth-inning deficit. From an Orioles perspective, that was a terrible loss. And so we on Saturday afternoon had the O's announcing having fired Brandon Hyde and having fired Major League field coordinator / catching instructor Tim Cousins, and having named third base coach Tony Mansolino as interim manager. And we then later on Saturday had the Nats stomping the O's, a 10-6 win at Oriole Park at Camden Yards. The Nats in MLB's 2025 regular season now are 20-27. The O's now are 15-29. This installment of Nats Chat brought to us by Mason Kalfas, the top legal recruiter in Washington, D.C. Mason has been with us since her first season. You can reach him at 202-486-3535. We in this game on Saturday had a scary situation with Nats outfielder Jacob Young. We'll get to that shortly. But, Mark, you could say that Davey Martinez's team on Saturday showed that the Orioles' problems are not all about his friend Brandon Hyde. A 6-run first inning for the Nats. The O's cannot blame Brandon Hyde for that.
No, they can't. And I was kind of joking with some of my Baltimore writer friends that if you're Mike Elias and you've decided it's time to make that obviously significant move, you don't make it the morning of a Kyle Gibson start. You wait until after he pitches, because the odds of him being the one to turn it around for you are pretty slim. Probably going to go the other way around. And boy, talk about beating a team when it's down. That's exactly what the Nationals did. I can't say we've seen that from them many times over the years. Number one, getting the opportunity to face a team that's in that kind of position. But then number two, taking full advantage of it and wasting no time doing it. This game was over in the first inning. That does not happen very much. And certainly for a team that for weeks we've been talking about, can they just get to an opposing starter? Can they take an early lead? They finally did it, and did it in such a big way that it almost made the rest of the game moot.
I said to Mark after we were done taping the installment of the podcast for the Friday night game, Kyle Gibson has been wretched this season, and this was a prime opportunity for the Nats to have a big offensive game, and sure enough, they did. Before we go further, though, Jacob Young. So Young in this game as the Nats starting center fielder and number 9 batter, 2 for 3 with an RBI triple and a single, but he left the game due to a left shoulder injury that was suffered in scary fashion.
The one-strike offering. Fly ball, deep right center field. Long chase, Jacob Young on the go, way back there. He reaches out, can't get it, crashes into the fence. Ball picked up by Cruz. Young is down. 1 run scores. Over to third, Kjerstad, and Laureano at second. And it's 7-2. But the concern is Jacob Young, who slams into the fence. Could not make the catch. The ball in and out of his glove, and he's still down.
Young in an Orioles 2-run 7th left the game off crashing into the outfield wall on a 1-out opposite field RBI double by Ramon Laureano off the right center field wall and/or Young's glove to cut the Nats lead to 7-2. Young on the play hurt his left shoulder, lay on the ground for a while, and then in what was, I thought, an especially concerning moment, he, in trying to stand up, went down on one knee. If you go back and watch this, he's trying to get up, and he can't get up. He drops down to one knee. What do we know about how Jacob Young is doing?
So it's actually, the initial sense is that it's pretty encouraging, that not nearly as bad as it maybe looked. That up and back down again, I think, was him having his breath knocked out of him. That's what he said was the hardest thing. It was a shock, and that initial feeling like, oh my God, I can't breathe. And I think he was feeling that for quite a while there. And as he tried to step up and couldn't initially do it. But the good news, x-rays were negative. He's pretty sore, and it's the shoulder primarily, but he hit his hip. He hit his head against the wall. I mean, there was a violent collision there on a wall that it's padded, but not super padded from best that I can tell. But we talked to him afterwards. So that's a good sign that, he wasn't shipped off to the hospital or back in the trainer's room. He was able to come out, get dressed and leave the ballpark like he normally would. He's going to sleep on it tonight, hopefully on his right shoulder, not on his left shoulder, and see how he's doing in the morning. He might need a day or two, of course, to recover from that, but it doesn't sound like, at least initially, there's a great concern that he would have to miss any significant time. And I think the real tell there, 2 things. One, if you're paying attention to the AAA lineup like I was as soon as this happened, both Robert Hassel and Dalen Lyle were in the lineup, not scratched, playing. If there seemed to be a need to get one of them here immediately, you would have seen a move in that game. So that's number one. And then Davey Martinez himself even said that he feels like they're covered in the outfield, at least in the short term, if he wasn't available for a day or two. So my hunch here is that they think they dodged a bullet, and that, while he might miss Sunday's game and they have Monday off, he should be okay in the long run.
By the way, speaking of Rochester, Brady House, another monster game, 2 home runs for the Rochester Red Wings on Saturday. Brady House is banging down on the door of the house right now to be called up to AAA Rochester. You think about Jacob Young, he is really fast, he is bulked up. That is a bad combination when it comes to crashing into an outfield wall. So that was a frightening moment, but good to hear that at least the initial word is that he's doing well. But yes, the Nats in this game jumping all over Kyle Gibson. So the Nats for the game, 10 runs, 11 hits, 3 walks, 7 for 13 with runners in scoring position. How do you like that efficiency? The 11 hits, a triple, 4 doubles, and 6 singles. And you really can't say enough good things about the Nats and what they did in the top of the first in this game. 6 runs, jumping all over Orioles starting pitcher Kyle Gibson, who in this outing allowed 6 runs in 2/3 of an inning. The Nats in this 6-run first had 6 hits off Gibson. 5 of the 6 hits each had an exit velocity of at least 95 miles per hour per StatCast. The Nats 6-run first marked the first time that the Nats scored at least 6 runs in the first inning of a regular season game since May 14th, 2021. We are in May 2025. It had been 4 years since the Nats did what they did on Saturday, but that was like batting practice off Gibson. The Nats were all over him.
Now, look, Kyle Gibson is in a bad place, just like the Orioles are as a whole. It's only his 4th start of the year. He's got a 16 ERA, and in his first start against the Yankees, it was almost an identical situation. He gave up 5 in the first inning. That one was on a bunch of home runs. There was none of that in this case. So clearly, the pitcher had something to do with it, but you still, as a hitter, have to take full advantage of it, and they did that with some really good quality at-bats, quality contact, swinging at the right pitches. And to see, I mean, the idea that their first 6 batters could all get on base before making an out from this lineup, fantastic. That they could bat all the way around, get down to Jacob Young in the 9 spot. He could hit an RBI triple, and then they get to CJ Abrams again, second time in the inning. It was wonderful to see that. You remember I mentioned the other night, they had gone 8 consecutive games without scoring more than 2 runs off an opposing starter. They got 6 off Gibson and knocked him out before the first inning was even over. I know you can't count on that happening all the time, but boy, would it be nice to see something more resembling of that early in games. And it truly sets the tone for the rest of the day. It allows them to play out in front. It allows the starting pitcher to breathe easy. It allows them as a lineup not to be tense the whole way. It just makes such a difference. Even if you score a couple of runs, it doesn't have to be 6. I know this is what they've been preaching for weeks. This was a great day for them. Let's see, can it carry over in any way?
So in terms of the individual offensive standouts for the Nats in this game, James Wood, he is the Nats starting left fielder and number 2 batter, 1 for 3 with an RBI single and 2 walks, including an intentional walk. And he had a stolen base. The new daddy, Luis Garcia Jr., just off the paternity list, the second game back. He is the Nats starting second baseman and number 5 batter, 2 for 5 with an RBI double and a 2-run single. So the birth happening for Luis Garcia Jr. and a very nice game happening for him in this game on Saturday.
And then as he told us afterwards, it was such a good game that he might have to have another kid now. And we said, whoa, slow down. You don't need to be doing that quite yet. It was nice to see that from him. We know that he has struggled for the better part of the first couple months of the year. But to come out and, again, put together good quality at bats, hit the ball hard, and drive in some runs was big for him. Maybe this can get him going as well because he needs to get on some kind of hot streak. They need him to get on a hot streak. I mean, as much as he's struggled, he's batting 5th for them in this game, and he's usually somewhere in the top portion of a lineup that needs some more depth to it. And so if he could get going to any extent, that would be huge for this lineup.
And batting 4th for the Nats, Keibert Ruiz. He in this game as the Nats starting catcher, 2 for 5 with an RBI double and an RBI single. We have not had a Keibert Ruiz conversation in a few weeks. I'm trying not to make it so that every game, every week is a referendum on Keibert Ruiz. Like, he just needs to have a good season. So I feel like you got to let the season breathe a little bit. He got off to the white hot start, has since cooled off. You look at the Keibert Ruiz slash line now for this regular season. The batting average is good, 283. The on-base percentage is pretty good, 331. What stands out is the slugging percentage, just 368. Really has not hit for much power, but he is getting on base. He is hitting at a pretty decent clip, and he obviously had a nice game on Saturday.
Yeah, look, I think he's doing fine, especially within the context of what he was last year. Was he going to keep up that torrid pace he was on in April? Probably not. That might be too much to ask, but he is still, producing for them. And it always boils down to, with him, is he swinging at the right pitches? When he gets really swing happy and he chases these balls out of the zone, that's when he gets into trouble and he goes into slumps. And he just needs to be reminded every once in a while, just hold on, wait for a pitch in the zone. When you get one, you do usually hit it pretty well. The funny thing is that his first inning double in this game, and it was a bullet back up the middle that fooled Cedric Mullins, and he broke in on it and wound up going over his head for an RBI double. It was on a changeup that was maybe a foot out of the strike zone. So maybe that's actually the worst thing that could happen for Ruiz, to actually have success on a pitch that is so far out of the zone, because it's only going to encourage him to swing more. But I guess you'll take what you can get from that. I think he's been fine. I think the biggest thing with him, and it's really both of their catchers, is the improvement in throwing out runners. Such a huge issue for them, not just last year, but prior to that as well. They've both been significantly improved this year. And for Ruiz, who plays as much as he does, I think that might even be more important than the offense. In a best case scenario, this team gets to a point where they have enough other hitters doing well to bat in the top half of the lineup that Ruiz can move down into, say, the 6th or 7th spot. I think that was the idea going in. And then what you had was Dylan Cruz struggling. You had Josh Bell struggling. And because Ruiz got off to such a good start, all of a sudden, well, we need him in the 3-4 spot. They know that's not who he really is. Hopefully, he can continue to be productive. But even if he doesn't hit for power, they have that coming from other guys, so they can afford to bat him, say, 6th or 7th in the long run.
Perhaps Brady House is occupying that number 4 spot before too long. We're not going to get ahead of ourselves, but man, he is killing it right now. That double by Ruiz on which Cedric Mullins had the screw up, That's when you really know this is going to be a good day for the Nats, and the O's are just getting even worse because Mullins is known as an outstanding defensive player, and for him to make a screw up like that, that's out of character, but it happens in that 6-run first. Now, what was interesting with the Nats offensively in this game, so 6 runs top of the first, a run in the top of the second, 3 runs in the top of the ninth, but actually, for a decent portion of this game, the Nats didn't do much offensively. Charlie Morton, who relieved Kyle Gibson. Morton, who's had an atrocious season, demoted from the Orioles rotation to the Orioles bullpen. He allowed 1 run in 4 1/3 innings, 6 strikeouts, 1 walk. Cianel Perez, an Orioles reliever who has not had a good season, he had 2 2/3 perfect innings with 3 swinging strikeouts. Now, as mentioned, the Nats did put up 3 runs in the top of the ninth, but this was another one of those games for the Nats where the offense looks great, but goes awfully silent for an overwhelming portion of the game.
And against a guy who had been a completely failed starter to begin the year in Charlie Morton and was banished to the bullpen in a mop-up role, boy, you would love to put him out of his misery as well and open up a gigantic lead. And they did not do that at all. They were pretty much silent after the second inning until you get to the ninth. Now, maybe that's the understanding of you've got a big lead. The other team is so demoralized at this point, given everything that's going on. And so you take your foot off the gas pedal, but you better be careful because it didn't quite get to this point, but it started to get to that point in the bottom of the ninth where you're thinking, is this thing actually going to get interesting? The moment that Kyle Finnegan had to warm up in the ninth, that's never a good sign for a game that you led all the way by that much. And yes, that's a product of Zach Brzykcy struggling in the bottom of the ninth, but it's also a product of the lineup not continuing what it did in that first 2 innings.
Yeah, Kyle Finnegan having to warm up in this game was a failure. That cannot happen. The Nats went into that ninth inning, that bottom of the ninth, up 10-2, and your closer ends up having to warm up. That is a failure on the Nats bullpen. 2 Nats relievers in this game combined to allow 4 runs in 2 2/3 innings. One of them was really good, Jose A. Ferrer, 1 2/3 scoreless innings. He's having a good series, second consecutive day on which Ferrer stands out, but 1 2/3 shutout innings came into the game, bottom of the 7th, runners on second and third, 1 out, Nats up 7-2. And Ferrer retired each of the 2 batters he faced. But yeah, Zach Brzykcy, 4 runs in 1 inning. He in the bottom of the ninth allowed 4 runs, including giving up a 1-out, 3-run homer by Jackson Holliday to right field to cut the Nats lead to 10-6. It turned out that the Nats scoring those 3 runs in the top of the ninth very much needed. Ended up being a lot more important than you realized in the moment.
Yeah, and you're thinking, okay, well, that was the final nail in the coffin. But yeah, they absolutely needed it. Look, Brzykcy, we haven't seen a lot of him, but there have been some blow-ups from him, more than one. And when you get into that spot, and it's an 8-run lead in the ninth inning of a team that, as we said, is completely demoralized, you got to just finish the job. Don't even give them a chance to think about doing the impossible. And look, he was throwing strikes. It's not like he's walking guys and giving them free passes on base. So he's taking the right approach to it. It just wasn't effective. And we'll see, Orlando Ribalta, we haven't talked about him in a while, threw a simulated game on Saturday, 25 pitches. Sounds like everything went well. They'll see how he comes out of that, but he could be headed for a rehab assignment, and that could be the kind of thing that you only need a handful of games pitching before they would call him up. That could be a move they make here for Brzykcy at some point. It's unfortunate that Brzykcy has just not really shown us a whole lot in his limited time in the big leagues, but so far he hasn't really been up to the challenge. And if you can't trust a guy with an 8-run lead in the ninth inning, when are you ever going to trust him?
I'm afraid to even ask this question, but while we're talking about recovering Nationals relievers, is there any word on Derek Law, who has been on the 15-day injured list since March 26, retroactive to March 24th due to right forearm inflammation?
He is throwing. He's getting there, but to my knowledge has not been off a mound yet. But I think they knew that was going to be this case. So he tried to ramp up and get going right after opening day and was having trouble recovering between throwing sessions and all that. So they, I believe, gave him a cortisone shot, and that sort of sets him back a little bit. Now he's kind of got to start all over. So he finally, it was during the Cincinnati road trip that he joined them and he started playing catch again. And that's now been about 2 weeks since that. The feeling at that point was, we're starting from scratch. Let's not try to rush this. Let's make sure that everything is good. Feeling that maybe they did try to rush it before and that backfired on them. what that means timeline-wise, it's going to be a while. It's like he's starting spring training. So I think we're talking, end of June, even early July for him, which is really unfortunate based on what it appeared to be back in spring training. But I guess the good news is that since they sort of hit the reset button, everything has been going well as far as I can tell, and there hasn't been the same lingering issues any longer.
Well, that is something. So he's going to end up missing at least half of the regular season. April, May, June. He's going to end up missing.
It sounds like something along those lines. And there'll be plenty of questions about, did they take the right approach, trying to, wait in spring training and delay his getting going? But we know he was coming off of 75 appearances, 90 innings last year. Maybe deep down, he wasn't feeling 100% healthy. And I guess it's not shocking that he has had some issues coming out of it, but it does appear that there's nothing structural, that it's nothing like that. It's just been hard for him on the heels of that workhorse season to be able to continue throwing and not have issues in between his outings. And because they tried to kind of push it a little bit there earlier, it probably set him back even longer.
Hey, are you a law firm partner or associate looking to transition to a new firm because of compensation, or your firm recently committed to $100 million in pro bono work that you disagree with? Or maybe your firm is employing people like Jurickson Profar while your competitor firms are using torpedo bats and smoking the competition. If this sounds like you should explore the lateral market and give Mason Kalfas a call. Mason is the top legal recruiter in the Washington, D.C. area. He has been a Nats Chat podcast advertiser since the beginning of our show. Mason will work with you to create a marketing and business plan to pitch to new firms and dramatically increase your compensation and or day-to-day happiness in your new job. Mason has placed partners and associates in just about every large law firm in D.C. and New York, and he can provide plenty of testimonials from candidates he has placed on the outstanding service that they received. You need a strong advocate in your corner to find the best law firm out there for your future career. Call Mason Kalfas today, 202-486-3535.
Life as a small business owner, everything is your problem, and there aren't enough hours in the day. That's where LinkedIn Jobs, and by proxy Nats Chat, are here to help. For those crucial hires that you absolutely can't whiff on, turn to LinkedIn Jobs. Simply post your job, and LinkedIn will take it from there, making sure it gets in front of the properly qualified candidates who are searching themselves. Find out why more than 2.5 million small business owners have turned to LinkedIn Jobs to grow their staff. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/natschat. That's linkedin.com/natschat to post your jobs for free. linkedin.com/natschat. Terms and conditions apply.
Gibson will wind up with Abrams at third. And the pitch. Swing and a ground ball through the left side, a base hit left field. Abrams trots home with run number one as James Wood drives in his 28th run of the year. And the Nationals immediately get to the scoreboard with nobody out here in the top of the first inning. It's the Nationals 1 and the Orioles nothing.
Well, the Nats starting pitcher for this 10-6 win at the Orioles on Saturday was Jake Irvin, and he did a really nice job. He did exactly as you want a starting pitcher to do when you jump out to a big early lead. Irvin in this game, 2 runs in 6 and a third innings, 6 strikeouts versus 1 walk. And the 6 strikeouts stand out because Jake Irvin in recent outings had not been generating the strikeout. He did generate the strikeout in this game. He gave up 5 hits, which were 3 doubles and 2 singles. He was handed a 6-0 lead to begin the bottom of the first, was handed a 7-0 lead to begin the bottom of the second, and he did precisely what he needed to do, worked efficiently and threw strikes. 98 pitches, 67 strikes versus just 31 balls. Now, with Irvin, I know the velocity has come up. So I was looking at the velocity, paying attention to it as the game was going on. The velocity was not great in this game. His average four-seam fastball velocity was just 91.5 miles per hour per Statcast, down from his season average. His curveball velocity for this game was down significantly from his season average, but he did have the 6 strikeouts, and he overall did a good job in this game. What'd you think about Irvin?
I think the strikeouts were kind of most notable there. He only had 3 total strikeouts in his last 3 starts. And he said specifically the curveball is something they tried to work on over the last 5 days. And I wonder, he didn't say it outright, but I wonder if part of that strategy was to take a little off it. Maybe he was trying to throw it too hard and it wasn't getting the kind of break that you want on it. And so that little decrease, because I saw the same thing, may have actually been by design and to his benefit because he was getting swings and misses finally with that. Now, the fastball velocity, it's not, in the mid 90s anymore. Now, I got one of his strikeouts at 94 miles an hour, but a lot of it is more like 91 and 92. His mindset really was when you get that kind of lead, 6-0, you throw strikes, you don't help him out at all. You try to get quick outs, you go as deep into the game as you can. So he really did accomplish exactly what he wanted to in this game. The one walk, I think, is very important as well. So I think it's a step in the right direction for him. If he's getting the strikeouts, if he's keeping the pitch count down and going deep in games, I don't think you get that worried about what the velocity readings are. As long as he is still getting swings and misses with it and throwing the ball in the zone, I think you're okay with that and just look for what the results are.
The concern with the diminished velocity just would be, is there something wrong with him health-wise? But there does not appear to be. I mean, he's eating up innings. He's making his starts. So maybe it is just one of those things where the velocity is down. Nobody's thrilled about it, but it's not necessarily indicative of some larger issue with his health.
The sense all along has been a mechanics thing and nothing more than that. And, you take them at their word on that and hope that that's true, and that when his mechanics are off, it causes the arm to drag behind the rest of the body, and therefore the velocity goes down. So he may be trying to fight through something to make that happen, but the results have been all right. And on a day when they need him to get to the 7th inning, he did that, and you happily take that.
So the Nats off to a very good start in this series, have won 3 of 4 games since the 7-game losing streak, and the Nats go for a 3-game sweep at the Orioles Sunday afternoon, 1:35, Michael Soroka versus Zach Eflin. Now, I know Davey Martinez prior to the game talked about the big news regarding the firing of Brandon Hyde. The two guys are close. It still is pretty remarkable. You have, obviously Nats and Does, right? The two teams of the Mid-Atlantic region, the two teams of Masson. Each team's manager had come from the same coaching staff, right? Joe Maddon's coaching staff with the Chicago Cubs. What struck you in terms of what Davey had to say prior to the game regarding the O's firing Hyde?
Number one, just showing how close he really was with Brandon Hyde. And I didn't realize this part of the equation. So way back in 2014, going into the 2014 season, Davey Martinez is still the bench coach of the Rays, and he interviews with the Cubs for their managerial job. He wound up not getting it. It went to Rick Renteria for, as it turns out, only 1 year. But Brandon Hyde was already working for the Cubs at that time, not on their big league coaching staff, but in their front office. And he was part of the interview process. Davey said he talked to Brandon Hyde for like a good 2-3 hours during all of that and felt an immediate connection with him. And that even though he didn't get the job, he got a nice message from him afterwards that suggested that he liked him a lot. He liked what he had to say, and that this is somebody that he might develop a baseball relationship with. So fast forward a couple years, Renteria lasts only 1 year. Joe Maddon now gets the job, and Davey goes along with him to be his bench coach. And now Brandon Hyde's the first base coach. So they're together for 3 years on the big league staff. They, of course, win the World Series for the Cubs, one of the most momentous championships in baseball, or really sports history, because of the history of the Cubs and everything. And then Davey reaps the benefits of this by getting the Nats job in 2018. Hyde replaces him as the bench coach, and a year later reaps the benefit of it by getting the Orioles job. And they face each other quite a bit in the years since. Hyde bested him 19-13 in head-to-head games. By the way, this is the first time the Nats have won the Battle of the Beltway series for a season since 2018. So over this period of time, it's been all Orioles, and that's been Hyde beating his friend, Davey Martinez. So there's a personal connection there, obviously, and he feels bad for him when this happens. But there's also, I thought this was the telling line from Davey. He says, we all know what we're signing up for when we take these jobs. You know that the buck has to stop somewhere. And if things are not going well, it often falls on the manager's head, whether or not it's truly the manager's fault.
But, we all know what we sign up for when we take this job. So it really does stink. He's a good man.
And while he didn't say it, I could only think of 2019 at 19-31, when the rest of the world is thinking Davey Martinez could be out of a job. And I asked him, not specifically that situation, but overall, how do you as a manager, when things are not going well, deal with that idea of knowing, hey, I could be out of a job at any moment if things continue down this path? And he said, and I believe this from him, said it really never goes through his mind that he really has to stay focused on the task at hand that day. And ultimately, it's not his decision what's going to happen. So I'm sure he had memories of 2019, and we know how well it worked out that the Nats stuck with Davey. Who knows what would have happened here in Baltimore? They're not exactly comparable situations. I can also only imagine what goes through Davey's mind right now, as we've discussed, on a team that has a little higher expectation this year than they have in a while, has not so far lived up to that, but has had moments. The last few days have helped, perhaps in that regard. But I'm sure somewhere deep down in his mind, he does think about the fact that he is under maybe a little more pressure than he has been. And while the Orioles situation is different and there's more immediate pressure to win, eventually that's a spot that he could find himself in here.
It's such an odd time for the job of MLB manager, because you could argue that MLB managers have never been as powerless as they are now. Like, the power structure for clubs really has shifted over the last 15, 20 years with the rise of analytics, to where the faces of franchises, the guys who really truly run franchises now, are the general managers. There was a time when the managers were the faces of the teams, and in a lot of ways ran the teams. Like, you go back, to the 70s and 80s and 90s, and all of the celebrity managers in MLB, right? Like Billy Martin and Tommy Lasorda and Whitey Herzog and on and on. You don't have people like that anymore. So many of these managers now are these like nameless, faceless people. And so there's a thinking that managers are interchangeable. For a lot of teams, it is the general manager, it is the front office that puts together the lineup, not the manager. I actually think the Nats are one of the few teams where you can legitimately believe that the manager is putting together the lineup on a game-in, game-out basis. I don't know that that's the case for the majority of MLB teams anymore. The other thing that I thought about is this. The Nats, for all of their managerial changes over the years, have not had an in-season firing of a manager since Manny Acta in July 2009. Now, they did have the in-season managerial change in June 2011 with the Jim Riggleman resignation. But, we now have 3 managerial firings this season. The Nats had a bunch of managerial changes over a period of time, as you know, and yet an actual in-season managerial firing. It has been more than a decade and a half since we had that with the Nats. You got to go back again to Manny Acta in July 2009. That really is something.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to ownership and the way they approach things. Very deliberate. They don't make rash moves like that, and probably don't like to pay managers who are no longer managing for them. I think there's that aspect of it. But I think it also speaks to Mike Rizzo, who, it's funny because you might think of him as this impulsive guy who can make a snap decision, and every once in a while he does. But deep down, I think he's a pretty patient guy and willing to let things play out and see how they go. And I mean, as we've discussed, remarkable how this franchise went for that long stretch where not a single manager made it to a third full season with this team. It was basically every 2 to 2.5 years that they were making a switch for one reason or another. And now Davey Martinez is in his 8th season with them. Now, yes, winning the World Series does a lot for that. It bought him a lot of time that he wouldn't have gotten otherwise. But it is remarkable how that has shifted from what this franchise used to be. And I would say probably for the better. It was never a good thing to be changing managers every 2 years. That's not a model of anything that you want to follow. But we are really, for the first time in a long time, kind of thinking along those lines of, could there be a change coming, whether it's in season or after the season? How much does this year's result matter in a way that previous years have not? They're finally coming back around to that idea. But what you just stated, the fact that Acta is the only one who's been fired in season, is part of the reason that I have not felt like Davey's job is really in jeopardy yet. That can obviously change. You never know how things are going to go. But it has felt to me like if, the Orioles made this move because they believe they should be winning right now and that they still have a chance to win right now. And so you make that move. I know within the clubhouse, the Nats feel like they should be winning right now. I don't know at the top of the chain if they feel that way, and if they then feel like a change would make a difference in that regard and suddenly make them more competitive with a chance to win in 2025. And that's why I've felt all along, and we'll see how it plays out, but I felt all along like the eventual fate of what they decide to do with their manager, more likely than not, doesn't happen until the end of the season and isn't going to happen early on like these other guys have.
This installment of Nats Chat brought to us by the great Mason Kalfas, the top legal recruiter in Washington, D.C. Mason has been with us since our first season. You can reach him at 202-486-3535. You tell us what you think. Hit us up on X at Nats_chat. You can find us on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast. You can email the show, natschatpodcast@gmail.com. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. Nats Chat is on the radio Sunday morning 9 to 10 on ESPN Richmond, which is 106.1 FM in the Richmond, Virginia area, and Sunday morning 9 to 10 on Priority Sports Radio 94.1 in the Virginia Beach area. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. We thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat Podcast.
He's not running, and the pitch is hammered towards center. Streaking back Peters. He's still on the run. That's over his head, and it's over the wall. House homers again, this time to right center field on a line. A 2-run shot this time, and it's a 3-0 Red Wing lead.